Welcome to my channel, Cauldron and Crone. This is my first video. I'm really excited about it. This video is about the reason why Easter always falls on a different date every year. I think most of us go through life not knowing so many things that we should know, just like about the days of the week and what they're named after and the months and et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. But this is something that happens in our lives every year. Most of us don't even know why. We just accept it. And that's part of the problem. But I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about the resurrection story of Jesus. So I'm not going to get into the whole argument about what goddess or if a goddess, if Easter's named after a goddess, whatever that is. I believe that, but just because of the way Christianity has kind of flipped the script all the time with pagan ideas and turned them into their own, which is their MO. But anyway, okay, so let's get started with the idea of resurrection first, and then we'll get to the whole date thing. So the idea of the resurrection, the earliest stories of the resurrection that are recorded anyway, so it goes back 5,000 years. So the story is that Inanna, she is a Sumerian goddess. She's called the Queen of Heaven, and she's one of the primary deities that the Sumerians worshipped. Y'all probably heard of the Sumerians if y'all have ever read the Bible. They're considered the bad people, but they weren't. Again, it was a twist. But so Inanna goes to the underworld, and where her sister lives. Her sister Ereshkigal is the dark goddess of the below, of the underworld. And so Inanna goes to the underworld, hangs on the cross, becomes a rotting corpse hanging on the cross, and then she's finally rescued by her handmaiden, and then she trades places with her lover Dumuzi. So it's very much like the story of Persephone and Demeter, or Demeter's daughter Persephone, where Hades. So this is later on when the patriarchy started getting hold of stories that were goddess based. This is part of conquering, which is a whole nother couple of videos I'm going to have about that. But when Hades grabs Persephone, so notice the Sumerian story is Inanna goes on her own. It was her choice. And then this much later mythology of Persephone being abducted, it's a male that takes her. He has power over her, and he takes her to the underworld. That's just a little tidbit of some of the stuff I have coming up. But so when Persephone is below, the earth just dies. Everybody's sad, they're afraid they're not going to make it through the winter. Especially in Europe, it's so much cold. I live in Austin, so we don't care about winter here. It's like such a relief to have winter here if we have it. Haven't had much one this year. But so anyway, and then when she emerges from the below, the world springs to life with flowers and butterflies and rainbows and lambs and bunnies and all of those beautiful, happy, fun things, right? And so there are these kind of myths throughout time of the resurrection coming from the below, usually either by choice or being abducted, and then sometimes they choose to make the sacrifice for the earth. There's so many of them I can't count, but those are the two major ones. And there are some where it's deities switch off willingly, like the Irish Bridget, and the Cailleach is the dark goddess of winter, and then Bridget comes, it's Groundhog's Day for us, February 2nd, and February 2nd is an ancient Celtic holiday called Imoch. But that's when Bridget comes back. Bridget takes over and the Kaliach leaves. Anyway, so this idea of the resurrection is a very ancient, thousands and thousands and thousands of years older than Christianity. As a matter of fact, the resurrection story of Christ is the very last one. So there's by no way that that's the origin story of resurrection. It was adopted just like everything else that is celebrated from Christianity. Okay, so now that you have that information, I'm going to talk about why Easter falls the way it does. So in the early 300s, Constantine conquered the Romans, and Constantine, he kind of has a bad rap in a way. I mean, of course, I never knew the dude, but you know, from everything I've read, he did kind of try. He wasn't trying to force in an aggressive way. I guess he was being more diplomatic. And I'm basing this on, or I'm comparing this as in comparison to the later Crusades and the witch burnings and all that stuff. So in comparison to the way some other leaders have tried to force Christianity on people, Constantine was pretty chill in that regard. But anyway, so he had this dilemma. They had this holiday called Easter, and it was the resurrection of Christ, and which is probably based on a whole history of that. And again, the way that they tried to convert pagans to Christianity was by taking elements of what they already believed and spinning it to where it seemed like it could possibly also be pagan, and confusing the pagans. Most people back then, and most everybody was pagan. Only about 8 to 13% of the population was actually Christian during this time. So it was the majority of them were pagans. And so, you know, they were uneducated, you know, so I guess they were, you know, easily swayed, easily manipulated, whatever. Some of them, definitely not all of them. They're definitely the brilliant ones. Just like here, we have the not educated and the very educated. But anyway, so he decided that Easter needed to have some pagan elements to it. The one thing he did know was that he wanted it to be on a Sunday, which totally makes sense if you're a Christian. So he put together this council to try to figure out what to do. So this council came up with the solution to it. So as I was saying about the resurrection stories, the other, so rejuvenations, all of those stories have to do with the spring equinox, the ones that I was telling you about with Persephone and Inanna, and you know, all of those mythological stories about the resurrection and all of that is usually a spring equinox story. So that's one thing that the pagans already worshipped or celebrated, was a resurrection story. And then the other piece of this that the pagans were part of the pagans' way of life was the moon cycles, because the moon, they live by the moon. I mean, today's pagans, we still, you know, celebrate the full moon, the energy of the moon, the full moon, the new moon, you know, every phase of the moon. You know, there are different people that do different things, right? But they lived by the moon, you know, and they didn't have light, you know, so the full moon is when, you know, they had light. And during the waxing, during the waxing moon is when they could get stuff. They based their planting on it, their harvesting on the moon. When weddings would happen, when they would try to get pregnant, everything was based on phases of the moon. Okay, so we have the spring equinox, which is about the resurrection. and we have the moon phases. So he takes both of those, and so this council decides, okay, so we're gonna make Easter the first Sunday following the first full moon following the spring equinox. Okay, so we got your spring equinox happening, and then you got to wait for the full moon, and then you got to wait for the first Sunday after that full moon. So the reason why sometimes Easter is like this year, where it's the 21st or 20th of April, as opposed to March. Of course, it's never going to be before the spring equinox, but it could be the day after the spring equinox. Or let's say, for example, let's say the full moon is on a Friday. I'm sorry, the spring equinox is on a Friday. The full moon is on a Saturday. Then that Sunday could be Easter, right? So you could have it as early as, so those three things have to happen. So you could have it Easter as early as March, like 23rd, and as late as like right now, or it could even be later, actually. I think our last full moon was, I want to say it was April 12th. So that's the reason why Easter is this coming Sunday. So you could track it yourself, pick up a calendar, look at your phone, go backtrack, forward track from the spring equinox to Easter. You'll see that there is a full moon right before that Sunday after spring equinox. I guarantee you. It's math, basically, right? And I'm not usually good at math, but I know this. But anyway, so there you go. There is the explanation as to why Easter falls on a different day every year, and the pagan roots to that story. Okay, so if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you'd give me a thumbs up, and or even better, subscribe. And even better than that would be to buy me a coffee, which is a lot like Patreon. It is just like Patreon, but it's a way to help support this channel. I'm gonna have some crafts that I'm gonna do with you guys, and some other things. So it's gonna help me support the channel, get the supplies I need, and possibly sell some of the stuff that I make. So anyway, if you celebrate Easter, I hope that you have a wonderful Easter. And if you don't celebrate Easter, I hope you enjoy your day off, just because it's a holiday on the calendar, right? All right, see y'all next time.